Miss Parker didn't introduce us. I'm Catherine Ballou.
I'm drunk as a skunk.
You all say
Cat Ballou didn't play by Western rules. It laughed at them. A schoolteacher turned outlaw, a drunk gunslinger with a tin nose, and two singing cowboys who narrated the chaos like a Greek chorus on horseback. This wasn't High Noon. This was a comedy that gunned down every cowboy cliché Hollywood ever made. And behind the laughs, nothing went smoothly. The star showed up drunk for real. The script was rejected over and over. And one performance, it won an Oscar that nobody saw coming. These are 20 weird facts about Cat Ballou. And the bonus? A prop that became so iconic, museums fought over it. Saddle up. This ride gets stranger than fiction. Number 1. Before Cat Ballou became a hit, it was a book nobody wanted to film. Roy Chancellor wrote the novel in 1956, a Western satire about a female outlaw seeking revenge. Studios took one look and said no. Too weird, too risky. A comedy Western with a woman in the lead? Audiences won't buy it. But producer Harold Hecht saw something different. He optioned the rights and spent years shopping it around Hollywood, getting rejected at every turn. Columbia Pictures finally bit, but only because they needed a cheap B-movie to fill their schedule. They gave it a tiny budget, no major stars confirmed, and zero expectations. What they didn't know was that this throwaway project would flip the Western genre on its head and become one of the most profitable films of 1965. Sometimes the best movies happen because nobody's watching close enough to stop them.
And the first time I asked you to do one little thing for me, like rob one little...
Number 2. Jane Fonda wasn't the first choice for Cat Ballou. The studio wanted someone sweeter, more traditional, someone who wouldn't challenge the cowboys too much. Names like Anne Margaret and Tuesday Weld were floated around. But director Elliot Silverstein had a different vision. He wanted an actress who could play smart, tough, and funny without losing her femininity. He wanted someone who could make you believe she'd trade a schoolhouse for a six-shooter. Jane Fonda was on his radar, but she was considered too serious, too method, too invested in dramatic roles to do a comedy Western. But Silverstein convinced her by telling her the truth. This isn't just a comedy. It's a satire about power, justice, and how the West was really won. Fonda read the script, saw the intelligence behind the jokes, and signed on. She didn't just play Cat Ballou, she became her. And in doing so, she proved that Western heroes didn't need to wear spurs and swagger. Sometimes they wore skirts and carried books.
Lee Marvin as the drunkest gun in the West.
Number 3. Lee Marvin played 2 roles in Cat Ballou: Kid Shalene, the washed-up drunk, and Tim Strawn, the cold-blooded killer with a silver nose. And he made them so different, so distinct, that audiences didn't even realize it was the same actor at first. Marvin had built a career playing tough guys, villains, and soldiers. Comedy wasn't his lane, but when he read the script, he saw an opportunity to do something wild. Kid Shalene wasn't just a drunk. He was a tragedy in a cowboy hat, a legend who drowned his talent in whiskey. And Tim Strawn, his evil twin, was everything Shalene used to be before the bottle took over. Marvin didn't audition for the role. He didn't need to. The moment Silverstein met him, he knew this man could play broken and brutal in the same breath. And Marvin delivered both with a performance so layered, so unexpected, that it would change his career forever. Number 4. When Lee Marvin showed up to set, he wasn't always acting drunk. He was drunk. Not every day, not every scene, but enough that the crew noticed. Marvin had a reputation. He liked to drink, loved to party, and didn't believe in holding back. And for Kid Shalene, a character who stumbles, slurs, and falls off horses, it almost worked in his favor. Almost. During one particularly difficult scene, Marvin was supposed to miss a target while shooting. Simple enough. But he was so intoxicated that he missed the entire set. The prop gun fired, the blank went wide, and Marvin collapsed into a heap of laughter. Silverstein didn't yell. He didn't fire him. He just waited for Marvin to sober up, then shot the scene again. Because as chaotic as Marvin was, his performance was electric. You can't fake that kind of broken authenticity. And sometimes the best performances come from actors who live a little too close to their characters.
Nat King Cole, Stubby K.
Number 5. Nat King Cole and Stubby K were the heart of Cat Ballou, and they almost didn't make it into the movie. The Greek chorus concept, two cowboys singing the story as it unfolds, was considered too weird, too theatrical, too risky for a Western. Studio execs wanted to cut them entirely. They said audiences wouldn't understand it, that it would slow down the pacing, that it would confuse people. But Elliot Silverstein fought back. He told them the singers weren't just a gimmick, they were the soul of the film, the narrators who turned a simple revenge story into a folk legend. He insisted they stay, and the studio reluctantly agreed. But there was a catch. Nat King Cole was already dying. He had lung cancer, and everyone on set knew it. He was weak, in pain and struggling to get through takes, but he never complained. He showed up, sang every note, hit every cue, and brought warmth to every frame. Stubby K stood beside him, supporting him, covering for him when needed, and together they created one of the most unique elements in Western film history. Nat King Cole finished filming in late 1964. He died 3 months later in February 1965, just weeks before Cat Ballou hit theaters. His final performance wasn't a dramatic role or a concert hall finale. It was a singing cowboy in a comedy western, and it remains unforgettable. Number 6. The tin nose wasn't just a prop, it was a statement. Tim Strawn's silver nose, the result of a gunfight gone wrong, became one of the most iconic images in the film, but getting it right was a nightmare. The makeup department tried latex, tried rubber, tried metal painted to look real. Nothing worked. It either looked too fake, too heavy, or fell off mid-scene. Lee Marvin hated it. It made him terrifying, made him inhuman, made him the villain you couldn't forget. After dozens of failed attempts, they finally settled on a lightweight metal prosthetic that hooked over Marvin's real nose. It wasn't comfortable, but it worked. And every time Strawn appeared on screen, cold, mechanical, deadly, that silver nose gleamed like a warning. It didn't just scare Cat Ballou, it scared audiences too. Number 7. The town of Wolf City wasn't real. It was built from scratch on a Columbia ranch lot designed to look like every Western town you'd ever seen, but just a little bit off. The saloon was too colorful, the jail was too small, the streets were too clean. That was the point. Cat Ballou was a parody, and the town had to reflect that. But building it wasn't easy. The budget was tight, and the construction crew had to work fast. They recycled sets from old westerns, repainting facades, rearranging storefronts, cobbling together a town that looked authentic but felt like a stage play. And it worked. When you watch Cat Ballou, Wolf City feels like a place you've been before, but can't quite remember. It's familiar and strange at the same time, a ghost town haunted by comedy. After filming wrapped, most of the set was torn down and reused for other productions, but a few pieces remained, scattered across the back lot, silent reminders of a town that never existed but felt more real than most. Number 8. The train robbery scene almost derailed the entire production. It was supposed to be a simple gag. Cat and her gang rob a train, things go wrong, chaos ensues. But the logistics were a disaster. They needed a working train, a section of track, explosives, stunt performers, and perfect timing. The budget didn't cover half of it, so they improvised. They rented an old locomotive from a rail museum, borrowed track from another production, and hired a skeleton crew of stunt riders who'd worked cheap. On the day of shooting, everything that could go wrong did. The train broke down twice. One of the horses spooked and threw its rider. An explosive charge went off early, sending smoke billowing across the set and triggering a minor panic. The crew thought someone was hurt. Turns out, it was just bad timing and a miscommunication with the effects team. They reset, reshot, and somehow pulled it off. What looks like a smooth, funny sequence on screen was actually held together with duct tape, luck, and a director who refused to give up. Number 9. Jane Fonda did most of her own stunts, and it nearly ended badly. She insisted on riding her own horse, doing her own falls, even staging her own gunfight choreography. The stunt coordinator warned her it was dangerous, that one wrong move could mean a broken bone or worse. But Fonda didn't care. She wanted Cat Ballou to feel real, not like an actress playing dress-up in the Old West. During one scene, she had to leap from a moving wagon onto a galloping horse. It required perfect timing, perfect balance, and a lot of trust. On the first take, she missed. Her foot slipped, and she nearly went under the wagon wheels. The crew gasped. Silverstein yelled cut, but Fonda got up, dusted herself off, and said, "Let's go again." The second take was flawless. She made the jump, landed clean, and rode off like she'd been doing it her whole life. The shot made it into the film, and audiences had no idea how close it came to disaster, because that's what made Cat Ballou work. It wasn't just funny, it was fearless. Number 10. Before the cameras rolled, there was a fight over the tone. Columbia wanted a straight comedy, something light and harmless, a western you could take the kids to. But Elliot Silverstein and the writers wanted something sharper, darker, more satirical. They wanted to mock the myths of the Old West, to expose the greed, corruption, and violence hiding behind the cowboy legend. The studio pushed back. They said audiences wouldn't get it, that westerns were sacred, that you couldn't make fun of John Wayne and get away with it. But Silverstein held his ground. He said Cat Ballou wasn't mocking westerns. It was celebrating them by telling the truth. And the truth was, the West was never as clean, noble, or heroic as Hollywood made it seem. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes ridiculous. The studio finally agreed, but only on one condition. Keep it funny. Don't let the satire get too heavy. Silverstein nodded, then went ahead and made the movie exactly how he wanted. And when Cat Ballou became a hit, nobody at Columbia complained.
An angel fights like the devil, the eyes of a...
Number 11. The famous drunk horse scene wasn't supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be sad. In the script, Kid Shalene's horse was just as washed up as he was, a broken-down nag that could barely walk straight. But when they brought the horse on set, something magical happened. The animal they'd chosen, a retired mare named Smokey, had a natural comedic timing that nobody could have predicted. She would sway at perfect moments, stumble with impeccable rhythm, and pause at exactly the right beats, almost like she understood the joke being played. Her head would droop, her legs would cross mid-step. She'd stop dead in the middle of a scene and just stand there looking utterly confused. It was pure comedic gold. Lee Marvin took one look at Smokey and immediately started improvising. He'd lean on her for support like she was a drinking buddy, talk to her in slurred whispers, stumble alongside her in this beautiful dance of two broken souls trying to stand up straight. The crew couldn't stop laughing. Take after take, Smokey kept delivering performances that seemed almost calculated. Some insisted it was trained behavior, others swear it was just incredibly lucky casting. But the truth is, nobody really knows what made Smokey so perfect for the role. What they do know is that the drunk horse became one of the most beloved characters in the film, stealing scenes without saying a word. Fan mail came in asking about the horse's well-being. Kids wanted to know if she was okay, if she'd really been drinking. And after filming wrapped, Smokey was retired to a ranch in Thousand Oaks, where she lived out her remaining days in comfort, probably never understanding why everyone kept laughing at her. Number 12. The Oscar win shocked everyone, including Lee Marvin himself. When the Academy Award nominations were announced in early 1966, Marvin was up against serious heavy hitters: Laurence Olivier in Othello, the Shakespearean giant; Rod Steiger in The Pawnbroker, delivering a devastating Holocaust drama; Richard Burton in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold; and Oscar Werner in Ship of Fools. These were serious actors in serious films delivering prestige performances that the Academy traditionally loved. And then there was Marvin, playing a drunk cowboy in a comedy western. Nobody gave him a chance. The smart money was entirely on Olivier. Burton was a close second. Marvin himself didn't even prepare a speech. He showed up to the ceremony on April 18, 1966, sat through the categories, and fully expected to applaud someone else's victory. When Julie Christie announced Lee Marvin for Cat Ballou, he sat frozen. His wife had to nudge him several times because he thought he'd misheard. The audience erupted in sustained applause, not because it was expected, but because everyone knew they'd just watched the Academy do something genuinely brave. Marvin walked to the stage in a complete daze, his face showing pure shock. His speech was awkward and short, almost embarrassed. He thanked the cast and crew, made a joke about his horse being the real star, and walked off holding the statue like he'd stolen it. Later, he told a reporter he never imagined a comedy performance would win, that he'd spent his career playing tough guys and killers, and the one time he falls down drunk and makes people laugh, that's what gets him an Academy Award. Number 13. The movie almost got shelved after a disastrous test screening. Columbia showed an early cut to a focus group in Pasadena in late 1964, and the response was brutal. Half the audience walked out before the film ended. The other half sat in confused silence. The exit cards were worse. Too silly. Doesn't know what it wants to be. The singing cowboys are annoying. Studio executives panicked. They'd already invested money they couldn't afford to lose, and now they had a movie nobody seemed to want. Emergency meetings were called that night. Executives flew in from New York. The finance department started calculating losses. Some wanted to completely recut the film, strip out the narrators, add more action, turn it into a conventional Western. Others wanted to dump it to drive-ins and cut their losses. There was even talk about shelving it completely, locking it in a vault, pretending it never happened. But Elliot Silverstein refused to change a single frame. He stood firm and told the nervous executives that the Pasadena audience wasn't the right crowd, that they'd tested it in a conservative suburb where nobody understood satire. He demanded another screening in a different city. Columbia reluctantly agreed. The second screening was in San Francisco 2 weeks later, and everything changed. The audience howled with laughter from the opening. They cheered the singing cowboys. They gasped at the tin nose. They stood and applauded when Kid Shelleen finally sobered up and faced down his counterpart. The exit cards came back glowing. Suddenly, Columbia had a hit. Same exact movie, not a frame changed. Different audience, completely different response. The executives who'd wanted to kill it were now taking credit. Number 14. Jane Fonda and Lee Marvin couldn't stand each other at first. She thought he was unprofessional, a drunk who treated the set like a playground, showing up late reeking of whiskey. He thought she was uptight, too serious, too method for a comedy. They barely spoke between takes. When they had to do scenes together, the tension was visible, crackling like static electricity. The crew noticed. Silverstein noticed, but he didn't intervene because that friction worked beautifully on camera. Cat Ballou and Kid Shelleen weren't supposed to be friends. She was a desperate schoolteacher trying to save her father's ranch. He was a washed-up drunk she'd hired by mistake. The disconnect between them was essential to the story. You can see the real tension in their early scenes. The way she looks at him with disgust. The way he can't meet her eyes. That wasn't acting. That was genuine dislike captured on film. But something strange happened halfway through production. During a difficult scene where Cat confronts Shelleen about his drinking, where she tells him he's worthless and pathetic, Fonda delivered the line with such raw venom that Marvin broke character. He looked at her, really looked at her, and started laughing. Not a mean laugh, but a genuine, surprised laugh of respect at how fearlessly she'd gutted him. And Fonda, caught off guard, started laughing too. The scene fell apart, and in that moment something shifted. They started talking, really communicating. Marvin admitted he'd been scared. Fonda admitted she'd been terrified. By the final week, they weren't just co-stars. They were genuine friends who respected each other's craft. Number 15. The catchy theme song almost didn't make it into the movie. The Ballad of Cat Ballou, sung by Nat King Cole and Stubby Kaye, was written by Mac David and Jerry Livingston. But when they first presented it to Columbia executives in early 1964, the response was harsh rejection. They hated it. They said it was too folksy, too simple, too repetitive for a major release. Where was the dramatic sweep? Where was the orchestral grandeur? This sounded like something cowboys would sing around a campfire, not a proper theme for a studio production. They wanted something bigger, more dramatic, more in line with traditional Western scores. Something like The Magnificent Seven or High Noon, epic, memorable, Oscar-worthy. The composers went back, tried different arrangements, added full orchestration, rewrote lyrics. Nothing satisfied the suits. Every version came back with notes. Not big enough, not cinematic enough, still too simple. The composers were ready to give up. Finally, Elliot Silverstein stepped in and said firmly, "Use the original version. It's absolutely perfect." He fought for that song in meeting after meeting, arguing that its simplicity was its greatest strength, that it needed to sound like an authentic campfire ballad, not a manufactured Broadway number. The studio finally gave in reluctantly but attached conditions. The song wouldn't be promoted. They buried it in marketing. Then the movie opened in June 1965 and audiences went crazy for it. They hummed it leaving theaters. Radio stations played it. Within weeks, it climbed the charts. It was nominated for an Academy Award and became one of the most recognizable Western themes ever written, all because one director refused to let the studio kill something beautiful. Number 16. Michael Callan, who played Kat's love interest Clay Boone, was convinced he was in the wrong movie. He'd signed on thinking Cat Ballou was a serious Western adventure with some light comedy. Nobody told him it was a full-blown satire. So when he showed up to set and saw Lee Marvin stumbling around drunk, Jane Fonda firing 6 shooters in a ball gown, and 2 singing cowboys narrating every scene, he thought he'd walked onto the wrong production. He checked his call sheet 3 times. He pulled Silverstein aside and asked, "What kind of movie is this?" Silverstein smiled and said, "A good one. Trust me." But Callan didn't trust him. He spent the first week confused, uncertain how to play his scenes. Should he be funny? Should he play it straight? Should he wink at the camera? Silverstein gave him simple direction. Just be sincere. Be the guy who believes in all this. So Callan played everything completely straight. He gave earnest performances, delivered lines with conviction, and that's what made it work brilliantly. While everyone else leaned into comedy, Callan stayed grounded, creating perfect contrast. He was the straight man in chaos. By the time he realized what kind of movie he was in, it was too late to change, which was a blessing because his sincere approach gave the film what it needed. Number 17. The final shootout between Kid Shelleen and Tim Strawn was filmed in one brutally hot afternoon in July 1964. Both characters were played by Lee Marvin, which meant the scene had to be shot twice using stand-ins, body doubles, and clever camera work. Marvin would film his lines as Shelleen, then rush to the makeup trailer where artists would transform him into Strawn, applying the silver nose prosthetic and changing his costume. Then he'd shoot the same scene from the opposite angle, back and forth all day, under desert sun that climbed past 110 degrees. The metal nose prosthetic became unbearable in the heat. Sweat pooled underneath it. The adhesive melted. Between takes, Marvin would rip it off, gasp for air, down hot water, then let them glue it back on. His face was blistered by midday. The makeup supervisor wanted to stop, suggested continuing the next morning when it was cooler, but Marvin refused. He knew if they didn't finish in one day, if they had to match the light later, it would never look right. So he pushed through. He later said it was the most exhausting day of his career, but he never complained on camera. As Shelleen, steady and focused, as Strawn, cold and terrifying. 2 completely different performances filmed hours apart, and when editors stitched it together, it looked seamless. Audiences had no idea they were watching one man fight himself. Number 18. Cat Ballou made Jane Fonda a star, but it almost ended her serious acting career. Critics loved the movie, audiences loved it, box office numbers soared, but some in Hollywood saw it as a step backward. Here was an actress who'd done serious dramatic work, proven she could handle complex roles, and now she was doing a comedy western? Some directors stopped calling. Some producers thought she wasn't serious about her craft. Fonda felt the shift immediately. Scripts that would have come to her went to other actresses. Meetings got canceled. Her agent had to work twice as hard. She later said the year after Cat Ballou was one of the hardest of her career because she had to fight to be taken seriously again. She had to prove that doing comedy didn't make her less of an actress. That range was a strength, not a weakness. It took years, but she won that fight. She went on to win 2 Academy Awards, became one of the most respected actresses of her generation, and helped redefine what it meant to be a leading lady. But she never forgot the lesson Cat Ballou taught her, that Hollywood will always try to put you in a box, and the only way to survive is to keep breaking out. Number 19. The movie's release strategy was bizarre. Columbia had so little faith in Cat Ballou that they didn't give it a traditional wide release. Instead, they tested it in a handful of small markets, watching box office numbers like hawks, ready to pull it if it didn't perform. They didn't advertise it heavily. They didn't push for prime theater locations. They just quietly dropped it into rotation and waited. But something unexpected happened. Word of mouth exploded. People who saw it told their friends. Those friends told more friends. Theater owners started calling Columbia, reporting shows were selling out, that people were coming back to see it again, that they needed more prints. Within 2 weeks, Cat Ballou went from limited release to nationwide phenomenon. Lines wrapped around blocks. Theaters extended bookings from 1 week to 2, then 3, then a full month. The movie that was supposed to disappear became the surprise hit of summer 1965, eventually grossing over $20 million on a budget of less than $2 million. It outperformed big-budget westerns. It outlasted serious dramas with 10 times the marketing budget. And it proved that audiences were hungry for something different, something that didn't take itself too seriously. Columbia learned a valuable lesson that year. Sometimes the movies you believe in least are the ones that matter most. Number 20. After Cat Ballou wrapped in late 1964, the cast didn't stay in touch. They went their separate ways, onto different projects, different lives. Lee Marvin went on to make The Dirty Dozen. Jane Fonda continued her rise to superstardom. Nat King Cole passed away in February 1965. Stubby Kaye returned to Broadway. Years went by without reunions, without anniversary celebrations, without looking back. That's how Hollywood worked. You made a movie, you moved on. But decades later, in a 1993 interview, Jane Fonda was asked about her favorite roles, and Cat Ballou came up. She paused, got quiet, and started talking about Lee Marvin with tenderness. She talked about how difficult he'd been, how talented, how much she'd learned from him. She paused again and said something that surprised everyone. That movie saved me. I didn't know it then, but it taught me how to be fearless. She talked about how Cat Ballou showed her that comedy was just as valid as drama, that taking risks was more important than playing it safe, that the best performances come when you stop trying to be perfect. And sitting there decades removed from Wolf City and tin-nosed villains and drunk horses, she realized something. Cat Ballou wasn't just a comedy western. It was the film that taught her who she wanted to be.